event going on now at your local Jeep dealer. I'm Matt Pauley with the Sports Flash on 1420 WEMB Sports Radio.
Okay, I'm going to make the quick prediction that Ty Chandler will not win the Doak Walker Award this year. I mean, say what you will, but we don't know what's going on with Trey Smith up front, and Tennessee had the worst rushing attack in all the SEC last year. Now, I think Chandler's a fine back, and I think he proved that when he came right out of the chute running for 100 yards against Kentucky, where one of his linemen, Brett Kendrick, allegedly had to play with a concussion. That whole mess. That was the debut of Ty Chandler, and I thought he did very well. I think he actually also, didn't he have like 33 yards receiving in that game, I believe? I mean, and, you know, Tennessee came 1 yard short against Kentucky, and that's only the second time since 1984 that Kentucky has defeated Tennessee. And I don't believe that they have won in Neyland Stadium since then, and since the game's at Commonwealth Stadium this year, it's not going to happen. That streak will certainly survive at least until 2020, you know, and all this. But, man alive, I mean, you know, they have a lot of guys on a watch list of the Doak Walker Award if you're going with the running back of the SEC's worst rushing attack the previous season. I mean, they're just like, well, who can we... That is a courtesy honor, if I've ever heard of one. So you heard Matt Pauley discuss that on the Sports Update. But what I really want to discuss is, you know, the trial Tristan Rettke yesterday, because I think that it does touch sports. I think it touched all of our society. It is a disgrace to the community, to ETSU. Not necessarily that he was not sentenced with a felony, because the Supreme Court has said that hate speech, ugly as it is free speech. Okay, there are limits. Yes, it's not fire in a crowded theater, because one of the reasons why is that this incident with Rettke, as ugly as it was, thankfully did not turn violent. And so that's why, you know, misdemeanor charge, maybe $500 fine for, you know, being a jackass. Being a racist jackass. Which is what Rettke was. And since we have the internet, and you look up somebody's history now, Rettke will go down in history as a racist jackass. He will be remembered for the rest of his life, and he'll probably have to work for himself. I mean, you know, would you hire this guy to dig your ditches? Really? I mean, you know, that's what you've got right now. And the world needs ditch diggers too, but maybe not him. You know, that's the way it goes. This is not to defend Black Lives Matter, but what it is to ask, just, you know, look, there's a lot of criticisms you can give BLM, but it's a free speech zone where they're having their rally at, and if you want to have an opposing view, you're more than, you know, welcome, and it would be it would be constructive, it would be peaceful protest, which we hear so much about. If you merely made up a sign, poster board, you know, big paint, all lives matter, and you just held it up beside them, you know, nothing they can do. That's your counterpoint. Probably diminishes their point if that's what you're after. Or, you know, blue lives matter. You've seen that, you know, in support of the police and all that. That's another one, you know, that you could put up and all that, and it would have probably been very poignant, because I know one of the signs that the Black Lives Matter protesters on that day, September 28th, listen, what century am I living in? 2016. It only seemed like 1916 when the guy with the gorilla mask started to invade the rally. But, you know, what if you had written down instead a list of, you know, they had, at the BLM rally, there were 14 victims of police shootings. Well, what if you had Blue Lives Matters? Hey, you know, I mean, let's talk about this individually, case by case. I can remember a tweet myself that say Colin Kaepernick spoke of a time where, the police gunned down this person in cold blood. Well, actually, he had pointed what turned out to be a toy gun. But this was a man who had been putting this really realistic, I saw the video of it. It looked like a gun, and was going up to passersby, mothers with their children, and just sticking it at the heads of pedestrians on the street in New York City. Somebody called the cops on the guy, as you would, any sane person would. And then, when there's a guy with a gun pointing it on pedestrians around here, police show up, guy points described in the newspapers as a pipe at the police. I would have pulled my trigger. Looked like a gun to me. The man is killed. But then his supporters, said, he was killed for pointing he had a piece of pipe. That's all. Well, look at the video, folks. You tell me. And I think that's one of the reasons why, you've not maybe heard about this, but, Colin Kaepernick, racist police shooting, all this sort of... You look at this individually, case by case, we see a lot of this now, and what may have gone by as, the police were right back when is now not necessarily so today, maybe. But that would be the way to do it. You hold up a sign next to the Blue Lives Matter. You don't go with a gorilla mask and bare feet. What do you make your cause, if you are protesting BLM, appear to be when you are waving bananas in a gorilla mask in front of the Black Lives Matters demonstrators? You totally destroy your own cause, and you sabotage your own life when the pictures are taken and he's brought to trial and so on and so forth. But I just want to ask, just what kind of a community we have, because the first, segment, if you missed it, I was talking about first ETSU game I ever went to back in 1986, ETSU 41, Davidson 16. The streak was over. 14 winless games in a row, gone. And that should have been a happy event, and I don't remember anything about the game. The only thing I can remember is that, and also, it was the band is taunting Davidson. Davidson is 1-10 the year before. They're 0-9. You're just breaking a 14-game winless streak. It's really time to trash talk, really? And you're doing it to Davidson? Huh? Really? Davidson back then actually had scholarships. Now they don't for their football team, but they did back then. And the band member, to celebrate in the fourth quarter of this, started taunting Davidson and acting like he was a member of the KKK. And it was disgraceful, and I left early. And that was 33 years, or it was 30 years before Tristan Rettke, 33 years ago today. And you just start asking, wait a minute, if they were doing that then, what have we learned? And also, as I said, ETSU just lost back then. They were terrible. And why would a coach leave them for a D2 school? Maybe because that's the environment that's around ETSU at the time. And so now we have Tristan Rettke, 30 years later, and have we learned? I know Rettke, he was from, Middle Tennessee and all that, but he's still, I can go to college anywhere. I'll go to ETSU. That's the guy. He chooses ETSU, and the university says, yeah, come here. Think about that. I've asked on this show Steve Forbes. I also asked Carl Torbush in his last season. I recorded the interview. You heard it here. Did Tristan Rettke influence or hurt ETSU recruiting? And Steve Forbes told me, it hasn't come up. If it does, we'll deal with it. Whatever that means, really, it's, and there's not a whole lot that he can say right there. It hadn't come up. I'm a bit surprised because if I was recruiting against ETSU, you darn well bet I would use this against ETSU. Oh, you really want to go there? That's what God, yeah, I mean, you'll have a wonderful fan base. And maybe that would not be appropriate for all ETSU fans, but takes one bad apple to spoil the bunch. And the thing is, there's some precedence here. And I remember Carl Torbush telling me, well, that's not who we are. But the more I think about it, I want to believe him. I want to agree with him. Who wouldn't? But I just think that that's almost like, okay, I'm the coach at ETSU. I got to defend. I got to promote ETSU at all times. So I'm going to give the boilerplate. That's not who we are. Because then I started, and I didn't think of it, and even though I had, would it have been appropriate right there? I mean, you've been starting an argument, possibly. So, 30 years ago, there was this band member. The point is, what did we learn in 30 years? It doesn't look like much. And I'd like to agree with Torbush. Like I said, I mean, Jonesboro, Tennessee, 1820. First abolitionist newspaper. There's the historic markers up. I mean, that's a big thing. That's what you'd like the community being known for, right? Unfortunately, in Jonesboro, they went from the Maximilian Intelligencer, that was the name of the newspaper. Looked up the history. It went from 6 readers to 2,000 rather quickly. Okay, So that's what they had in Jonesboro way back when, 200 years ago. But by the 1960s, the Herald and Tribune had a writer. His name was David Curtis Stevenson. Do you know who he was? He used to run the KKK in Indiana. And I realized there wasn't an internet back then. You come in, I'm new in town. Oh, how do you do? And all this. People didn't know that. But, yeah, that's who then the newspapers embrace a century and a half later. You go from that in the 60s to this vile ETSU band member in 86 that I saw walk down on. And then Tristan Rettke being accepted in the same university. And it just is, where are we? That's the question. It's not so much, okay, no, hate speech is protected as free speech, so it's not a felony. And it didn't become violent, okay? He gets, a misdemeanor, disrupting a meeting, maybe he'll pay 500 yards. His life is over. I mean, he'll pay the penalty there. And he had to leave school. I mean, we get that. But yeah, what about it? And so that's one of the things I want to ask. Just what your takes were. I'll take, if anybody wants to call in at 743-6124 and discuss during the break. That's 743-6124 with me. I'll take calls during the break. I will not afterwards. We'll go on the air with them. But if not, I'll just go to SEC Media Days. Tri-City Sports Now.
It's summer, and it's time.